Welcome to the Daily Review. This is Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading. And today is April 30th, 2024, and today is Tuesday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, Apple and Tesla rebounding. But first, looking at today's major economic events, so at 2:30 South African time, out of the United States, we have an employment cost index number and a CB consumer confidence number coming out. Now, in addition today, corporate earnings for AMD, that's Advanced Micro Devices, and IBM. Now, looking at the various markets, starting out with the Forex symbols, the major pairs unchanged, while the Japanese yen kind of corrects itself after making new record lows. Now, looking at the indices, the Dow Jones unchanged, but the NASDAQ climbing higher. Now, looking at commodities, gold and oil trickling lower. When it comes to stocks, they're all over the place. Apple and Tesla rebounding, while we're watching Intel selling off and JP Morgan closing off that gap. All tremendous potential there. Now looking lastly at cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin trickling lower as well. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So here we go. First with the Euro USD. Now it's just dipping lower just now, 106.93-ish level. We're receding from our 107.37. Not a big deal. 40 pips, 50 pips, not a big deal. But this may accelerate if it's going to break the 8-day moving average. And we may see it go back down to 106.69-ish level, which is another 30 pips. Not a big deal. But from day to day, that's not a bad trade. Now jumping into the Japanese yen. This is the activity we missed on Monday. And look at that huge spike. We hit 160. And then we made a correctional move on the downside. Now we're about 50% of that, 156. That may still correct itself down to 160 once again, as this correction and inflation hitting Japan really very hard, as that correction still makes. Now looking at gold, not much, just trickling a little bit lower now at 23.19. Okay, keep an eye on that 2300. That's really the supportish level, so I'd like to look at that as potential support. Crude oil also readjusting itself to $82 a barrel. Now jumping into the U.S. markets, here we go. The Dow Jones really unchanged, okay? Didn't do much there. It did point a little bit higher, but nothing significant. However, looking at the NASDAQ, we moved higher yesterday to 17,900. Now, I kept on saying this. This should correct itself 50% from that 18,500-ish level to 17,200-ish level. So we should be about another 100 points higher, okay, for it to correct itself that 50%. Okay, that's my correctional point. Now looking at the individual stocks, Apple did head higher, okay? We had this nice look pivot upwards, but it did retrace just towards the end of the day. So does that mean it's hitting a resistance? Possibly, okay? So that's a correctional move right there. If we look at Tesla also, we had a second gap up for Tesla, that 194, that's really important, and hitting that 200-day moving average. Now that is a huge move for Tesla, okay, going from its 141 up to 194. That's over 50 points, you know, in just 2 days of trading. Now looking at JP Morgan, this is where it gets really interesting. We had a gap down, we sold off a little bit, and then we closed the gap, and we're right there at the top of the move. That is a potential downwards sentiment, okay, which means that it may still correct itself on the downside. So keep an eye on this, all right? And I'd like to see if that does correct itself. And there's room for it to correct itself, okay? We do have if we look at, okay, the RSI here, you can see that it's making lower highs, okay? That's just the way it is. It's making lower highs, and that may indicate that we have somewhat of a sell-off potentially coming up. So keep that in mind. This is really a huge play if it does fall out for us. Now looking at the other stocks, Intel getting beaten up. We're first looking at a weekly chart, okay? Now it did get beat up quite aggressively over the past year, and it's correcting itself. A big gap down from 34 down to 31. If we look at a weekly chart, how much further could it go? Well, at $30 a share, it's multi-time frame support. So keep that in mind. We're not that far away from it, $1.30 away from it. So that is something potentially to look at. Now, the stocks are mixed, so this is why it's a little bit difficult to trade them right now. NVIDIA still has room to come out with its quarterly earning reports, even though it did rebound a little bit. So this is another one that's on my radar. Now, lastly, looking at Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin just trickling lower, not much changed, okay? Now, it is trading in a very tight range. And like I said, until it gives you that momentum, nothing to really jump in for. So if we're looking for today, IBM coming out with their quarterly earnings and AMD, both big bellwethers as well. Now, they're not the classical type of high-tech companies. So AMD is, as it is a major competitor to Intel, but IBM is not. Okay, so I wouldn't give it too much weight for IBM as that coming out with that quarterly earnings. This is Fed Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.